Part 41. I Can See the Laws of Things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 401. After making her wish, Lin opened her eyes and her agitated mood calmed down. Call. With one blow, all the candles were extinguished. King Ian immediately jumped for joy and started cutting the cake. The cake was extremely huge. Banmen and Kimeng asked Chen Daoming to find someone to make it specially in the Kyushu region. After all, the earth does not have these things that only modern people can make. As he raised his hand, laws surged, the huge cake was cut into countless parts, and then the goddess of life spoke in a clear voice. The birthday cake is specially made to be so big. We definitely can't finish it. So for the people below, you also have a share. But there are too many people and it's impossible for everyone to have a share. I will try my best to share it with the children. I hope everyone won't fight for it. That's great, the goddess of life dash. Goddess of life, I want to eat cake too. I want it too, I want it too dash. Huge cheers formed a wave. King Ian smiled lightly and waved his hand. The cake was first given to Lin En and a few people in the sky, and then it fell to the ground. Seeing this, the others also used their strength, and pieces of cake quickly began to be distributed downwards. But according to King Ian, these cakes are made with children first and adults second. Above the sky, Lin took a mouthful of cream with a rich smile in his eyes. 2 days have passed since Lin's birthday. After the universal celebration, people began to live their normal lives and the city began to operate normally. Lin En was walking on the street, still wearing simple clothes, but her face had changed slightly. Now Lin En's appearance is already known to the world. If he goes out with his original appearance, it will definitely cause a huge sensation. Lin's life is starting to feel a little monotonous now. Sometimes I stay with my wives. Sometimes I go to the Kyushu territory to see the Kyushu guards and the fairy spirit army, or I visit the earth to see the imperial heavenly army, or I just wander around alone. King Ian and the others prefer the three of them to go shopping together. The common topics and common preferences between women are obviously much better. On this day, Lin was wandering on the street. There is no specific purpose. Maybe if he sees some interesting shop, Lin will go in and browse. Of course, perhaps, it is more likely that such a store is a tavern. Lin En was looking at the name of the shop next to him. Not far from Lin En, a man and a woman suddenly walked up to him. Lin En didn't think much about it. Unexpectedly, the two people walked straight towards Lin En and then stopped in front of Lin En. "Your Excellency, are you Mr. Lin?" Lin En couldn't help but be startled, and then turned around to look. The man is a middle-aged man. Since practitioners have long lifespans, his age cannot be seen. It's just that this person wears a brocade hat and mink fur coat, and his clothes look quite extraordinary. He is obviously not an ordinary person. Half a step behind him, there is a woman who looks like she is 20 years old. She is wearing a white fluffy shawl and has a pretty face that can be broken. At this moment, Lin En hides his appearance at any time, but this is only effective for people of low level. Those with advanced cultivation who are familiar with Lin En can still distinguish it from the breath at once. This man was a demigod, so Lin En was not surprised that the other party could recognize him. On the contrary, he was surprised that the two of them were looking for him. Lin nodded, with a calm expression on his face, waiting for the next step. The middle-aged man smiled lightly and said, "I wonder if I could ask Mr. Lin to talk about it." Lin En couldn't help but frown slightly. "Is there something that I can't tell you directly? Isn't it a bit disrespectful that you invited Lin directly before telling her who you are?" The smile on the middle-aged man's face froze for a moment, then he clasped his fists and said, "What Mr. Lin said is reasonable, but I am being rude. I am the leader of the Linghui tribe, Hui Yao." Lin En's expression calmed down, thinking that the person next to him was his daughter. He came with his daughter. If he didn't really have something important to ask for from his daughter, it would be Hui Yao who had other intentions. Lin An's mind was spinning, but there was no wave on his face. Instead, he calmly said, "Tell me, what do you want from me?" Hui Yao seemed a little embarrassed and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Mr. Lin, could you please move a little bit? There are many people here and it is not a place for discussion." Lin An nodded. He had nothing to do now, but he also wanted to see what kind of fun this glory could bring him. From this, the three of them came to a restaurant and asked to get into a private room. After entering the private room and sitting down respectively, Hui Yao motioned to Lin An to order, but Lin An did not take the order. Instead, he asked Hui Yao to order whatever he wanted. He only wanted a pot of soju. It was served first, and while the dishes were still being cooked, Lin didn't realize anything at all, so he directly poured himself a glass of wine and took a sip. Hui Yao's eyes flashed slightly. "I have always heard that Mr. Lin Di has 3 wives, all of whom are stunningly beautiful. A few days ago, I happened to come across some rare things, and I hereby give them to Mr. Lin Di. Maybe the 3 ladies will like them." With that said, Hui Yao took out a box from his arms, put it on the table and pushed it in front of Lin An. Lin An's eyes flickered, and he raised his eyes and took a look. This box was made of red sandalwood. The workmanship seemed to be quite delicate, and it was indeed not an ordinary thing. Lin An was not polite and opened the box and took a look. Inside the box, there were 3 identical amethysts. The crystal looks exquisite and clear, and the inside is crystal clear, just like the starry sky. Looking under the lamp, it feels like it is shining again. Hui Yao said again, "These 3 pieces of amethyst are all raw stones." Hui Yao doesn't know what Madam likes, so he has never ordered anyone to process them without permission. Besides, it would be more appropriate to give these pieces to the hands of Lord Lin Di. Therefore, I simply gave 3 rough stones to Master Lin. Lin An's face was calm and there was no trace of any thoughts. Hui Yao was still talking, but when he saw Lin An's appearance, he felt more and more unsure. As if to give him face, she opened the box and looked at it carefully, but Lin An never made any statement from the beginning to the end. Lin An smiled inwardly, and after a moment he suddenly said, "This thing is indeed extraordinary. I think you must have spent a lot of money to get it?" Hui Yao suddenly became happy. As long as Mr. Lin Di likes it, trivial matters are not worth mentioning. Lin An's face remained calm and asked again, "Where did this thing come from?" Hui Yao didn't notice anything, so he said calmly, "This object comes from the Far East. It was unearthed for the first time not long ago. People call it starry sky jade." Lin An said, "How much did this cost you?" Hui Yao couldn't help but wonder, why did Lin An mention the value of this thing many times? Although he was suspicious in his heart, Hui Yao couldn't figure out Lin An's meaning, so he had to speak honestly. "To be honest with Mr. Lin Emperor, I have an old relationship with the ruler of the East Heart City in the Far East, so I came here. Things are not difficult. I can see the laws of things." Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 402. Speaking of this, Hui Yao smiled, as if he was a little proud. If an ordinary person wants to obtain this thing, a piece of this size is enough to reach 50 million spiritual coins, and based on my friendship with the ruler of East Heart City, I only need 5 million spirit coins. Lin An smiled faintly. "It seems that your path is quite broad." Hui Yao showed a smile that everyone understood. He didn't say much, but suddenly touched the woman on his side. "Hui Shui, didn't you see that Mr. Lin Di's wine glass is empty?" Hui Shui's face was a bit nervous. When Hui Yao said something, Hui Shui stood up hurriedly as if in fear, then picked up the wine bottle and poured wine for Lin An. "Please use it, Mr. Lin Di." Lin didn't show any expression at all. But Hui Yao showed an unspeakable smile. "Sir Lin Di, this is my little girl Huixu." Speaking of which, that year Lin Di awakened the will of life for all mankind, and my little girl also received a favor. I heard that her mother since then, this girl has been admiring you a lot. Lin An felt contempt in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he said, "Tell me, why did you come to me?" Hui Yao's face suddenly became stern, the real show was coming. Hui Yao hesitated for a moment. A few days ago, I had something urgent to ask Deputy Commander Yi Zhan. I didn't expect that in the middle of the night, the Deputy Commander was still dealing with the matter. Speaking of this, Hui Yao seemed to sigh. The Deputy Commander manages everything day by day, which is really admirable. Although I, Hui Yao, am not talented, I still have the heart of family and country. Since then, I have often thought about how I could help the Deputy Commander share some of his burdens. It can be regarded as having some value in coming to this world. Lin couldn't help but smile. After talking for a long time, it turned out that she was really here to please him. Lin En originally thought that something might have happened to his daughter that made the tribal leader seek help from him, but he didn't expect that it would end up like this. Hui Yao couldn't help but be startled when he saw Lin An's smile. A bad premonition suddenly flashed through his heart. His expression changed slightly and he said, "I wonder why Mr. Lin Di is laughing." Yi Zhan picked up the wine glass and put it at the corner of his lips, but did not drink it. After a moment, Lin An said, "Chief Hui Yao, this is such a big deal." Hui Yao felt even more uneasy. "I wonder what Mr. Lin Di means." Lin An said, "You can get the materials that were just unearthed and even just named in East Heart City at 1/10 of the price. It's enough to show that you have great skills. Chief Hui Yao is so capable. Your daughter is 20 years old, a very good age, but you bring her to see me even though you know that I already have 3 wives. This is even more impressive. I have personally ordered Zhan to serve as deputy commander. There is a precedent of killing the leader of the Yuxian tribe. Yet you, Hui Yao, dare to come in front of me and bribe me like this. Hui Yao, you are so big. What a skill." As Lin An spoke more and more, Hui Yao's back became colder and colder, and his face became paler. In the end, he stood up and knelt down at the table. "Hui Yao's crime deserves death, please forgive me, Mr. Lin Di." Hui Shui was frightened when she saw this situation. She quickly stood up, her hands were trembling, and she stood aside without knowing what to do. Lin An drank all the wine in his glass and said slowly, "Do you know why I will come to this restaurant with you?" When Hui Yao heard this, he suddenly broke into a cold sweat. It turned out that Lin An had seen through him from the beginning. He knows everything. Hui Yao's face was ashen. Hui Yao doesn't know. Lin picked up the wine bottle, poured himself a glass, and took a leisurely sip before speaking. "I feel that maybe you are not the kind of person I think you are. You brought your daughter here because your daughter has some matters that require my help." At this point, Lin An became even more drunk and took another sip. "Although I cannot say that I am good, I cannot say that I am evil. If you really have any problems, I will help you, but you. This emperor is so disappointed." As soon as these words came out, Hui Yao trembled like chaff, and his head suddenly fell off. Lin An's tone simply frightened him. He knew that he had already gotten into big trouble. Some thoughts flashed through his mind, and sadness flashed in Hui Yao's eyes, and he kowtowed again. Lin An could even clearly hear the sound of his forehead hitting the floor. "Lord Lin Di, Hui Yao knows that he deserves to die for his sins. I just ask Lord Lin to let my daughter go. She is just a child. Please Lord Lin." Lin An's expression softened, and a force lifted up Hui Yao's body, forcing him to straighten up. Hui Yao looked puzzled. Lin An smiled lightly, and there seemed to be no waves in those eyes like the deep sea from beginning to end. "Although I hold you accountable, I never said I would punish you. You brought your daughter here, how could I do it in front of your daughter?" At this point, Lin An seemed to sigh. Do you think that if you don't tell me about this little trick of yours, this emperor won't know about it? Lin En smiled, as if he was mocking. It's just that I don't want to bother to interfere. If the water is clear, there will be no fish. In fact, what are you pursuing? They are nothing more than things outside the body. As the words came out, Lin En's expression became a little solemn, but no matter what, you should know how to restrain yourself. When this emperor holds you accountable next time, be prepared to take care of your own affairs. Hui Yao listened to it as if it were a heavenly book. His eyes were sometimes thinking and sometimes nodding. After hearing the last sentence, his face relaxed as if he had been pardoned, and then he was full of gratitude and kowtowed again. Hui Yao remembers the teachings of Lord Lin, and thanks Lord Lin for not killing me. As the space fluctuated, when Hui Yao raised his head again, Lin An's figure had disappeared. At this moment, he came out of an empty alley and merged into the street again. Simple clothes, ordinary appearance, just like an ordinary person. It seems that everything just now has never happened. However, after a closer look, you can still find a sigh in Lin An's eyes. This is the trivial matter of the world. Logically speaking, he has handed these things over to Yizhan, and he should not be bothered in front of him, but unexpectedly, someone still has the courage to walk in front of him. Doesn't Hui Yao know the danger? He naturally knows. Left and right, it's just the word power. Lin An sighed in his heart, and suddenly remembered the starry sky jade that Hui Yao had just taken out. It seems, it is really beautiful. Muttering to himself, Lin En recalled the crystal clear appearance, and suddenly he became a little interested in it. The space fluctuated, and Lin En's figure disappeared. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 403. When Lin appeared again, he was already on the streets of East Heart City. After changing his appearance and even hiding his aura, Lin soon arrived at a small shop on the street. This is a shop specializing in selling all kinds of jade and gemstones. Walking into the store, there were only sporadic customers inside. Nowadays, there are only a few people who come to buy or even just look at the jade. The boss was a middle-aged man, sitting in the central circular booth, looking bored. He stood up as soon as he saw someone coming. "Hello guest, what do you need?" Lin En roughly looked around. Inside the circular booth, there were all cut and manufactured finished products, including earrings, necklaces, and even hairpins, all in a dazzling array. Outside the booth, there were 3 grid-shaped shelves, and every shelf was almost filled with all kinds of rough stones. Lin Qiao glanced around and did not find his target, the starry sky jade. Lin En walked to the booth and asked, "Does the boss know about starry sky jade?" The boss was stunned for a moment, thought about it for 2 seconds and then said, "Starry sky jade? I've never heard of this before." Lin En nodded. It seemed that starry sky jade had not entered the market yet. Even before it entered the market, Hui Yao had already obtained it. That guy really had some tricks up his sleeve. The thought flashed through his mind, and Lin En spoke again, "Where is the largest jade shop in East Heart City?" Suspicion suddenly flashed in the boss's eyes. Obviously, Lin En was not from East Heart City. This starry sky jade is probably not simple either. After all the thoughts passed by, the boss didn't hesitate and directly told Lin En the location and name. Lin nodded lightly and walked out. After turning left and right, Lin En arrived at the Tianxia Jade Shop. A luxurious 3-story attic. The plaque in front of the door is made of unknown jade, which really reveals its extraordinary style. The owner of this store must be very rich. Walking into the store, you will find a dazzling array of items. Just the decoration and dazzling appearance are enough to show the luxury of this place. There were two welcoming ladies at the door. The moment Lin entered, they nodded slightly at the same time, "Welcome." Lin En walked straight in. There were service staff in front of every counter, and there were scattered service staff in the aisles. As soon as they saw Lin En coming in, they took the initiative to greet him. "Hello customer, how can I serve you?" Lin En looked indifferent. "I heard that you are the largest jade shop in the East Heart City." The waiter was taken aback for a moment, then smiled politely. "Mr. Miao praised it, but as you can see, the size of the small shop is indeed not comparable to that of ordinary jade shops." Lin nodded. "Take me to see your boss." As he spoke, Lin En showed a slight hint of cultivation. It was just a hint, but everyone on the first floor suddenly changed their colors at the same time. "Who is it? Such a breath." The service staff also paled and his mind started to spin rapidly. "Dear guest, I will contact our shopkeeper immediately. You can follow me to the VIP area first. What do you think?" After getting Lin En's signal, she bowed slightly and made a gesture of invitation, and Lin En followed behind. All the way to a rest area on the second floor, I gave a few instructions to the service staff here, and saw her trotting out. Not long after, the new service staff here brought a tray with some refreshments on it. "Dear guest, please use it with caution." Lin En sighed inwardly. Compared with the small shops outside, the service here is indeed not on the same level. It turns out that not only the Kyushu region has such scenes, but also the people on Earth from all eras can do this trick. Soon, a decent-looking middle-aged man in neat uniform walked quickly from outside. "Hello, distinguished guest, how can I serve you?" Lin's expression remained unchanged and he still blew hot air from the teacup in his hand. "I want to see your boss." The middle-aged man looked confused. "I don't know if this is possible." Before he finished speaking, Lin interrupted directly. "I don't want to repeat it a second time." The middle-aged man's eyes suddenly flashed, and a trace of anger flashed through his eyes. After all, he is also a national-level magic god, but this person is so disrespectful to him. However, thinking of the waiter's words, this person's cultivation was extremely terrifying, as vast as the boundless sea. The middle-aged man also became a little more cautious, and once again showed a gentle smile. "Dear guest, our boss has something important to do and is not in the store right now. If you have any needs, you can tell me first. I am the general person in charge of this store. I can solve any problems you have." Lin En frowned and put down the teacup. "It's not that I look down on you, it's that you don't have enough level." Saying this, Lin En sighed and gradually lost his patience. I didn't expect it to be so troublesome. He could directly call the city lord of East Heart City, but that would be too much of a fight. He just wanted to get a few pieces of starry sky jade. He doesn't want to affect people's lives too much. But when the middle-aged man heard Lin En's words, he couldn't control his inner anger, and there was a trace of sternness in his eyes. "I would like to know how much business this distinguished guest wants to discuss. Am I not even qualified?" Lin En was already upset, but at this moment, the middle-aged man was still a bit ignorant, so she couldn't help but frown at him. "You are just a national-level Dharma god. The demigods in this world are almost gone. What qualifications do you have to be arrogant in front of me?" The middle-aged man suddenly sneered. "You are a demigod when you open your mouth and keep silent. Are you still a god emperor?" As he spoke, the middle-aged man sneered obviously, with a slightly disdainful curve at the corner of his mouth. Lin En smiled. "I am not the god emperor." The middle-aged man became more disdainful and sneered. "Then you still dare to talk about demigods?" Before he could finish speaking, Lin's voice came again, choking him so hard that his voice stopped abruptly. "I am Xuanhuan." The middle-aged man stared at Lin En blankly for 2 or 3 seconds, and suddenly he couldn't help but laugh in a low voice. Seemingly realizing that this was inappropriate, the middle-aged man quickly suppressed his smile, and then said with a serious face, Your Excellency is not only Xuanhuan, I think you are eternal. Lin En nodded without changing his expression. Well, we are indeed not far from eternity. Puff. The middle-aged man could no longer hold back and burst out laughing, as if he had heard the funniest joke, and even his face turned rosy. There is no eternal existence in all mankind. How dare you say that you are not even far from eternity? The way the middle-aged man looked at Lin En was like looking at a lunatic, and it was clearly naked ridicule. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 404. Lin En's expression was indifferent, showing no sign of the middle-aged man's smile. In the 3,000 years of dreams, Lin En has never seen any battles, and he is nothing more than a clown. Fortunately, the middle-aged man did not say any fierce words, and Lin En was too lazy to argue with this man. Will the elephant prove its strength to the ants? At this moment, the tea in Lin En's cup was already a little cool. Lin En thought for a moment, and the power of cultivation gradually increased a little. The owner of the world's jade shop, come back quickly. The sound didn't seem to be very loud, but at this moment, it was like thunder, and it began to rumble and reverberate throughout the East Heart City. In an instant, a major earthquake occurred throughout East Central City. Who is this person who dares to create such a momentum in the city? The middle-aged man opposite Lin En was stunned by Lin En's hand. His face gradually began to look pale, and then a sense of shock crept into his eyes. You. Just when the middle-aged man was shocked, the space here fluctuated, and then a strange figure suddenly appeared here. The spatial fluctuations have not yet dissipated, but the sound has already been heard. Lord Emperor Lin came here, but Zos didn't greet him personally. This is really Zos's fault. Please punish Lord Lin did. Lord Zos, Lin, he is Emperor Lin. At this moment, the middle-aged man looked at the scene in front of him, and his whole body was shaking like chaff. The next second, he knelt down on the ground. Zos couldn't help but frown, turned his eyes slightly and glanced at him, but didn't say anything, and still waited respectfully for Lin with a clasped fist in his arms. Lin looked calm. Zos. Who are you? Zos buried his head deeper. Zos is the ruler of East Heart City. Lin En suddenly realized that under him was the deputy ground commander Yizhan, and under Yizhan was the city commander of the 4 major cities in the east, west, north, and south. Even if you don't count the level of cultivation, this Zos is still 1 level away from Lin. At this moment, the door of this place was suddenly pushed open, and then a figure strode in. He seemed to be quite imposing as he walked, but Lin En could still see a slight cold sweat on the man's temples. Obviously, this person's inner anxiety has reached the extreme. And in such anxiety, this person came half a step behind Zuosi and bowed deeply. I am Jiad, the owner of the jade shop in the world. I didn't know that Mr. Lindi is here to come. I hope Mr. Lindi will forgive me. Lin En didn't even look at him, but poured the bright tea in the cup on the ground, then poured another cup of hot tea, put it in front of him and smelled the aroma of the tea. I changed my appearance and concealed my aura. I just don't want to go to such a big fight. I'm just here for a trivial matter. But your shop, if I don't reveal my identity, I really can't invite your big Buddha. If there is any disturbance, please ask for Haihan from the Jiad store owner. As soon as these words came out, Jiad was immediately frightened and his face turned pale. He knelt down directly. Lord Emperor Lin. It is Jiad who deserves death. He failed to manage his subordinates well. I hope Lord Lin will forgive me. Lin En took a sip of tea and said, I heard from your subordinates that you were not in the store for something important. I think this time I came to disturb you. Jiad's face turned pale. Lord Emperor Lin, Jiad was just now on the 3rd floor. Lin's eyes suddenly flashed, and then he sighed slightly. My identity is unusual. I naturally know it, so I often hide my identity when doing things in private, just so as not to disturb people's lives? I didn't expect to encounter such a thing, hey. Jihad immediately put his head on the ground. Jade deserves to die for his crime, I hope Lord Lin will forgive me. At this time, the person in charge over there was already kneeling on the ground, trembling all over, not daring to move, let alone raise his head. Lin An sighed, that's all. I came here because I heard that a new jade stone has appeared in recent days, called Starry Sky Jade. I came here to find out about it from you. If there is any, I also want to buy a few pieces. Only then did Jihad raise his head. Even if this matter is taken care of by Jihad, there are currently 5 complete rough stones in stock in Jihad's office. Lin nodded, what's the price? Jihad immediately lowered his head again, Lord Lin Di, this is a shame. Lord Lin Di has saved the entire human race from fire and water several times. Those scenes are still vivid in Jihad's mind. If it weren't for Sir Lin Di, the entire human race would have been destroyed. I'm afraid humanity no longer exists, how dare Jihad accept Lord Lin's money? With that said, without allowing Lin An to refuse, Jihad ran out, obviously going to get the Starry Sky Jade. Lin didn't say anything, but looked at Zos. If the water is clear, there will be no fish. I know this, but everything has a limit. If it is too much, it will be a bit ugly. You should restrain yourself. As the ruler of East Heart City, you must have a steel yard in your heart. You only then can you be a good city lord. Zos's eyes showed deep meaning and he bowed deeply. Being able to sit in the position of city lord, he naturally understood Lin An's words immediately. Not long after, Jihad ran back and stretched out his hand, and 5 large jade boxes appeared on the coffee table. Lin An's eyes flashed. Each of these large jade boxes was a cube with a side length of 1 meter. Just the jade box alone was enough to show how valuable it was. Lin An thought for a moment and said, I don't want that much. 2 are enough. After that, with a wave of his hand, the 2 jade boxes disappeared. Jihad clasped his fists, it's just jade, Jihad is willing to give it all to Master Lin An. Lin An stood up, without looking at him again, and disappeared in 1 step, leaving only a faint echo lingering. No need. Lin An disappeared, and Jihad stood up straight. There was still some fear on his face, as if he was still frightened. Zos glanced at Jihad angrily, what a good thing you did. Jihad couldn't help but smile bitterly, and glared at the figure of the person in charge lying on the ground, hey. Who would have thought that Lord Lin An would visit privately incognito, just to avoid causing shock to the surroundings? This level of state is beyond our reach. Zos snorted coldly, you can claim the title of emperor if you can reach it. What a wishful thinking. Fortunately, your short-sighted subordinates probably didn't do anything too extreme, otherwise I might even lose my head. Take good care of you, it's a mess. With a cold snort, Zos flicked his sleeves, stepped forward and disappeared. Jihad's face gradually calmed down, and he glanced back at the person in charge, I'm upstairs, how dare you say that I'm out? At this point, Jihad's face became even more filled with hatred, and he wished he could kill this idiot on the spot. I don't need to say any more, just pack your things, get out, and find a place to bury yourself. The person in charge trembled all over. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 405. When Lin An appeared again, he naturally returned to the promised city. With his thoughts sweeping across, Lin soon discovered a jade shop. Lin An did not hesitate at all and stepped directly into the store from 10 miles away. This store is located not far from the Emperor Tiangong. Judging from the storefront, it is a bit more luxurious than Tiangxia Jade. It is obviously a large-scale jade store. At this moment, this small store is in operation, with only sporadic customers in the store, and more service staff staying aside board. At this moment, a burst of spatial fluctuation suddenly occurred in the store, and Lin An's figure emerged immediately. Such movement immediately attracted the customers of the store and countless waiters. At this moment, Lin An had regained her appearance. When many waiters saw Lin An's face, their expressions suddenly became wonderful. Lin, Lord Emperor Lin. Oh my God! Am I dazzled? Lord Lin De came to our store. Lin An looked calm and asked, where is your store manager? Lin, Mr. Lin De, our store manager is upstairs. Lin An raised his hand and stepped into the space crack. On the upper floor of the small building, Lin An judged who was the boss with a glance of his mind, and directly tore the space apart to appear in front of him. At this moment, the big boss was with his feet on the table, thinking leisurely and not knowing what he was thinking. I am too. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Lin An suddenly appear. The boss was so frightened that he almost fell down when his body tilted. Lin, Lord Emperor Lin. Lin An waved his hand. No need to say polite words, I have something for you to do, about Jade. The boss quickly stood up, straightened his collar a little, and said seriously, Wang Xiu will definitely do his best, but I don't know what Mr. Lin De is talking about. Lin An waved his hand, and two large jade boxes appeared on the ground. Starry Sky Jade, given your level, you should have heard of it. Wang Xiu's pupils suddenly shrank, and he thought of Lin An's identity. Then he felt a little relieved, and then he clasped his fists and said, Wang Xiu naturally knows about the jade that was just mined in Dongxin City in recent days. Lin An nodded. These two pieces of jade are exactly the same size and need you to process them. One piece is processed as a whole and made into a decoration that can be placed in the room. We will discuss the style in detail later. In addition, a pair of earrings, a necklace, and a bracelet. I want 3 sets of this configuration. The styles are the same and I will detail them later. If there are not enough scraps from this piece, just scrape them from another piece. Wang Xiu nodded. Such things were very common. He understood it as soon as Lin An said it. Wang Xiu understands. When the finished product is finished, Wang Xiu will definitely deliver it to the Emperor Tiangong himself. Lin An nodded, suddenly thought of something, and said again, you give me some time, and I will come and get it when the time comes. Wang Xiu thought for a while, how about 7 days later? Lin An nodded and immediately began to discuss the style issue with Wang Xiu. 7 days later. In the same office, Lin An looked at the starry sky jade that had changed drastically in front of him, with admiration in his eyes. The regular jade stone that was 1 cubic meter in size has now turned into a dragon in the starry sky. The dragon's body is circling, its eyes are majestic and majestic. Not far away, on Wang Xiu's table, there were 9 boxes arranged neatly. Lin An couldn't help but feel a little moved, and stepped forward to open them one by one. There are 3 sets of starry sky suits. Lin An had a bit of a smile in his eyes, not bad. Wang Xiu stood aside and heard Lin An's words clearly, and couldn't help but feel a flash of joy in his eyes. As long as Lord Lin is satisfied. Lin closed the box one by one, raised his hand to put away these things, and then spoke. You did a good job on this matter. If you have any problems in the future, you can come to me. I can selectively help you once. As for the extent of my help, it depends on the specific situation. Wang Xiu suddenly felt happy and almost jumped up with joy. This is Emperor Lin. People at the divine level. Although Lin An's words are very clear, whether to help or not and to what extent depends on the specific situation, but this is enough. Just being able to establish a relationship with Lin An is enough for him to be proud of the entire promised city. You know, so far, except for Yi Zhan and the people of the Emperor Tianjun, Lin An has not had any other relationship with anyone on the entire earth. Lin An is also quite satisfied with the processing this time, and he can also see Wang Xiu's attitude. Lin An didn't know what method Wang Xiu used to shorten the 7 days agreed on that day to 3 days. Lin even thought that this guy might have allowed the staff to have no rest for 3 whole days, so that he could be produced in such a short period of time. After explaining this, Lin An stood up and disappeared in one step. Lin An naturally returned to Dishan Palace. At this moment, the 3 girls were not at home. They probably ran out to play together again. Lin An took out the large star dragon and placed it in the center of the bedroom. These days, the 3 girls would come back from time to find new things. Lin's huge bedroom, which occupied the entire top floor, no longer seemed so empty, but had a bit of a homey atmosphere. Women bring color to life. It was not until the evening that the 3 women returned to the emperor's palace. As soon as they saw Lin En, King Ian rushed over. Brother! Ban Meng and Chi Meng were no longer surprised by this. The 3 women have long been their own family. After all, they have even experienced sharing a husband in bed. Lin En held King Ian's buttocks with both hands, and King Ian's long legs wrapped around her, and she gave her a sweet kiss. Lin En couldn't help but smile bitterly. Huh? Lin En, did you bring this back? It's so beautiful. Chi Meng spotted the starry sky dragon at a glance, and couldn't help but come closer to look, and Ban Meng's beautiful eyes lit up. Lin En smiled. King Ian turned around, immediately struggled off Lin En and ran over to look. Lin En waved his hand, and a total of 3 sets of starry sky suits emerged, floating behind the 3 women in an instant. Seeing that Lin En didn't speak, Chi Meng couldn't help but turn her head. I'm talking to you, what kind of stone is this? So. Halfway through her words, Chi Meng couldn't help but be stunned, and her beautiful eyes trembled slightly. She saw the starry sky suit floating behind her. This is. King Ian and Ban Meng couldn't help but look up, and immediately saw behind Chi Meng. This is, wow. So beautiful, King Ian said excitedly. Lin En smiled. The teacher said that good children will be rewarded by God, and only good children will have it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 406. Banmen Bingxiu was smart, and suddenly looked behind him, and was also stunned. When King Ian saw Banmen behind him, she immediately turned to look behind her, and her beautiful eyes suddenly lit up. Wow! I have one too, each of us has one, my brother is the best. Regarding the starry sky suit, the 3 women were obviously surprised. After all, until now, it can be said that Lin has not given them anything seriously. Speaking of this, Lin En felt a little guilty. As the emperor of the human race, he ignored his woman in this way. After this incident, a few days passed, and Lin En returned to the Kyushu territory and started a new retreat. He felt that this time's rest was enough. Practicing blindly is not necessarily a good thing, and the same is true for resting blindly. As a god, Lin En was well aware of his own condition. Time gradually passes. 2 years passed quietly, winter and summer, but for Lin En, who was in seclusion, it was just a snap of a finger. There is no time to practice. On this day, Lin En gradually woke up from the deep practice, and there was a deep throbbing in her heart. The peak of the divine wilderness. He is only one step away from reaching the summit of eternity. However, Lin En has been stuck on this step for half a year and has no clue. Lin En knew that his retreat should be over. At this moment, Lin En opened his eyes, and the aura around him disappeared in a flash. Like an abyss, like a prison, so terrifying. Standing up, Lin En's eyes seemed to be in a trance. Eternal and eternal, I don't know how far this step is. In the past 2 years, Lin En's understanding of the laws has become deeper, and he can feel that there are other laws in the depths of the universe. Those laws seem to be similar to those on Earth, but they also have their own unique characteristics. Obviously they are not exactly the same as those on Earth. Lin An's eyes were a little deep. Taking one step forward, Lin An came outside the house. Unexpectedly, Chen Daoming's figure appeared. Lin An couldn't help being stunned. What happened? There was some confusion in Chen Daoming's eyes, but it quickly dissipated and turned into a little excitement. It's nothing important. I just felt some movement on your side. I thought you were out of seclusion, so I came to take a look. Judging from your appearance, you are indeed improving again. Speaking of this, Chen Daoming sighed. Lin An laughed, if you don't make progress, why should you be in seclusion? Chen Daoming couldn't help but smile bitterly, you guy, ever since I met you, your cultivation has been like riding a rocket and it has never stopped. It's so irritating that you are more powerful than others. Lin An was speechless, it's not all smooth sailing for me. I will also have bottlenecks, just like now. Chen Daoming's eyes narrowed, and there was some inquiry in his eyes, what is your current bottleneck? Lin An knew what he meant and said, the peak of Xuanhuan is an eternity in one step. Chen Daoming suddenly took a breath, and then smiled bitterly again. After a moment, Chen Daoming adjusted his mood and looked a little more serious. Lin, let me tell you some of the research results in the small world in the past 2 years. You don't need to know these things in too much detail, but in general you should know. Lin nodded. The first is the defense force. They have developed weapons that are enough to pose a threat to the God Emperor level. These weapons have spread to some areas in the Kyushu territory, but you and I are the only ones with the permission to open them. The other aspect is life. I won't talk about this. You will know when you go to Josu territory when you have time. Now, people's lives have undergone some changes, and they are more convenient than before. Then there are spaceships. Counting the one you saw last time, there are now 3 spaceships in Kyushu domain, each one more powerful than the other. But we haven't started exploring the universe yet, and your vision is better than ours. Everyone, this matter still needs your approval. Lin An nodded, the exploration of the universe will be put on hold for now. I will pay attention to the situation in the Kyushu region when I have time. However, the most fundamental power is oneself, and external forces are limited after all. Chen Daoming said, of course you don't have to worry about this. You have your fairy spirit army and Kyushu guards, and they are working hard. Lin An nodded. Afterwards, Chen Daoming left, and Lin An took a step back to Dishan Palace. Thoughts swept across, needless to say, after 2 years, human development has been getting better and better, and Lin An returned after a long absence, and naturally stayed in the Emperor Tiangong for a few days, and also took the opportunity to be affectionate with the 3 girls. On this day, Lin An disappeared alone in the Emperor Tian Palace. Deep in the alley, there is the smell of wine. Like many times in the past, Lin approached slowly, like an ordinary drinker. The strong liquor entered the throat, which was quite satisfying. Just as Lin An was savoring the taste, the wine glass in his hand suddenly stopped. After a while, Lin An raised the wine glass in his hand again and took a sip. In the dark eyes, there was an indescribable brilliance. A few years have passed, and I didn't expect it to start again. At the same time, there was a silent earthquake-like vibration coming from everywhere on the earth, even in the Kyushu territory thousands of miles away in the sky. Countless people with advanced cultivation were all looking at the sky at this moment, with all kinds of lights shining in their eyes. At this moment, all the god emperors suddenly changed their colors. Others had not noticed the subtle changes in the world, but as the god emperors, they felt it at that moment. Even though it was only a slight change now, they still felt it. That was the fluctuation of the spiritual energy revival. The world is going to change again. Yi Zhan stood in front of the door and looked at the sky, his eyes were also deep, and even a little worried. The spiritual energy revival, This term that now seems a little old, once again emerged in his heart. Not only Yizhan, but all the god emperors remembered this term that had not been mentioned for a long time at this moment, and thousands of thoughts flashed through their minds quickly. The spiritual energy revival will not only cause a sudden change in the Earth's environment, but also cause turmoil in human society. This is a major earthquake that can affect the whole world. Everyone realized that a new world trend is coming. This Earth, a storm is coming. At this moment, Lin En, who was in the center of the storm, was still sitting in the tavern. Lin En's expression was still calm, as if he had no emotion at all, and he didn't seem to notice the vibration between heaven and earth at all. But his eyes were a little stagnant, and he was obviously in deep thought. Not long after, Lin En drank the wine in the glass, put some spirit coins on the table, stood up and disappeared in one step. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 407. Earth. With the beginning of the spiritual energy recovery, waves of spiritual energy began to gradually emerge from everywhere. From the beginning, as thin as a hair, the trend of spiritual energy recovery began to slowly grow and gradually form a scale. And half a month later, even people with low cultivation began to feel that the spiritual energy between heaven and earth seemed to be denser than before. Hey, have you heard about the spiritual energy recovery? Huh? Spiritual energy recovery? Didn't it pass a long time ago? Oh. It's a new one. I heard that a powerful person revealed that a new spiritual energy recovery is coming. Is it true? Doesn't this mean that the world is about to change drastically? Such rumors began to emerge among humans, and it was not just one or two people spreading it, but many people. When the saying one person tells 10 people tell 100 really starts to work, the spread of the news will become particularly terrifying, like a locust plague, covering the sky and the earth. And when a month passed, the revival of spiritual energy was no longer just a rumor. More people began to feel it personally. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth was really denser. An inexplicable panic began to grow quietly. At this moment, Lin En was sitting in front of the sofa, looking out the window with a calm expression. 100 meters high, the entire promised city was in front of him. At this moment, Lin En seemed a little silent. Behind him, two of the three women were lying on the bed, and Ban Meng was sitting opposite Lin En. The starry sky necklace in front of her collar reflected the bright brilliance, which matched Ban Meng's fair skin and complemented each other. This guy, probably thinking about the world again. Ban Meng's heart was fluctuating. However, at this moment, a strange fluctuation suddenly spread throughout the world in an instant. And it can be seen that at the moment when this fluctuation passed, Ban Meng's eyes suddenly trembled, and deep disbelief flowed out of his eyes. Surprisingly, it was not just Ban Meng. At this moment, Lin En also trembled, his eyes slightly widened, revealing a look of astonishment that had not appeared for a long time. Feeling the strangeness of each other, almost subconsciously, Lin En turned his head and exchanged glances with Ban Meng. The next second, this glance, in an instant, they had already got their own answers from each other's eyes. Standing up suddenly, Lin En's expression was a little solemn for a long time, and suddenly heard King Ian's voice behind him. "Brother, are you suppressed too?" Lin En couldn't help but shrink his pupils, and suddenly looked back at King Ian. Even King Ian. Lin En felt more uneasy in his heart, and his expression was quite puzzled. Why, they all felt a kind of suppression from heaven and earth. There was no doubt that this feeling of power was the power of heaven and earth. Lin En would never make a mistake in this feeling of rolling heavenly power. But why would heaven and earth suppress their power? Even his heavenly Dao fate will was not spared. Could it be, because of the revival of spiritual energy? Lin En was thinking, and suddenly heard Qi Meng's voice, "What are you talking about?" Lin En was stunned and looked back. "You didn't feel it?" Chi Meng couldn't help but be more suspicious. Feel what? Lin An couldn't help but take a breath. The three of them were suppressed, but Chi Meng wasn't. Why is this? Thinking quickly, Lin An's eyes showed solemnity. The only possibility is that the only difference between Chi Meng and the three of them is that Chi Meng is not from Zhu, but from the previous era. Lin An's mind suddenly became heavier. If this conjecture is true, it's not a good thing. At this time, suddenly there was a voice, as if it was transmitted across many distances, and there were faint echoes. Lin An. I feel the suppression of heaven and earth, my realm has been suppressed, and it has retreated to the edge of the Divine Emperor. I'm afraid that if this continues, I will soon regress to the demigod. The voice can be heard with a strong sense of anxiety and worry, and even a little fear. The source of this voice was none other than Chen Daoming. Lin An took a deep breath. Unexpectedly, the Zhu domain, which was far away in the sky, was also affected. I know. Don't panic. Tell me as soon as there is any situation. Chen Daoming was silent for a while. Is it that you are also suppressed? Lin An did not hide anything. Yes, I was also suppressed, but this matter cannot be made public, you know what I mean. Chen Daoming took a deep breath and ended the voice. Lin An frowned and his mind swept across. As expected, the people of the City of Promise were not suppressed. Only the people of the Zhu domain were suppressed. At this moment, Lin An had no way to do it for a while. The panic in the Zhu domain was inevitable, and the people of the City of Promise had not felt the power of suppression, which was a good thing. Without saying anything more, Lin An immediately took the four women and took a step back to the Zhu domain. In fact, compared with Chen Daoming and others, Lin An was suppressed more strongly. After all, he was the only god among humans, and the suppression he suffered was far beyond the reach of others. The lower you go, the weaker the suppression you suffer. Even at the national level, the suppression is only a little bit, and at the national level, there is only a slight sense of suppression. Only Lin An was bearing the terrifying suppression that no human being could feel. That suppression was like the whole sky was about to come down, forcibly robbing Lin An of his control over the law, so that Lin An's realm began to decline. And after a day, Lin An's realm was finally suppressed from the peak of the godly wilderness to the edge of the godly wilderness, and it was not far from falling down from the godly wilderness. Lin An could feel that this suppression was not a real loss of strength, but only a temporary restriction of strength. Just like an elephant, it can only use the power of a monkey. His own strength did not disappear, but was restricted in strength. A day passed, and Lin An had no clue. However, at this time, Chen Daoming suddenly sent a voice transmission. Lin An, the priest is gone. At this moment, Chen Daoming had regressed from the god emperor to the demigod, and his voice was quite depressed at the moment. This feeling of power disappearing is really unbearable. Lin An nodded calmly, I understand. Chen Daoming said in a heavy tone, I think it won't be long before the news of our declining strength will become the talk of countless people on earth. Lin An, are you prepared? Let's just say that this time, we may have a civil war. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 408. Lin An's expression had returned to calmness without anyone noticing, of course I know. Hearing this, Chen Daoming did not say anything else. What he could see, Lin An could also see. With a sigh, Chen Daoming's voice disappeared, and Lin An closed his eyes again. Lin An had tried many times, but his control over the law was still gradually decreasing. It was as if this law was the power of heaven and earth, and the original heaven and earth fell into a deep sleep, so it was temporarily controlled by Lin An. This feeling was like someone used thunder to deal with him in the past, and Lin An only needed a thought to make the other party's thunder lose control. And now, this feeling actually came to Lin An. In this regard, Lin An pondered hard, but still couldn't figure it out, as if there was really no way to save it. Time passed in a flash, and a few days passed. That day, Lin An's eyes suddenly opened, and there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. His power, finally, regressed to the God Emperor. In this world, Lin An was the most severely suppressed, but Lin An's realm regressed the slowest. It was as if even this world could not easily suppress Lin An. This was Lin An's strength. However, even so, to this day, Lin An still had to admit that his strength at the level of God was no longer useful. At this moment, Lin An stood up, looking quite sad. Outside the room, Chi Meng suddenly pushed the door in, as if she wanted to say something but stopped. Lin An knew that Chi Meng had sensed the decline of his cultivation. Now Ban Meng and Qing Yin have already become demigods, and even stayed on the edge of demigods. It seems that they are only a thought away from being reduced to world-class magic gods. Now looking at the entire Jiuzhou region, the only one who still has the strength of a god emperor is Qi Meng. Lin An. Qi Meng wanted to say something, but it seemed like something stuck in her throat, and she couldn't say anything. Lin An smiled faintly, "It's okay, it's just that my cultivation has regressed. I am still a god emperor." Qimeng's eyes turned red and she nodded deeply, "Yes, it's okay, I'm still here, I'm not affected." Lin An couldn't help laughing, "Why are you still crying? I'm not going to die." Qimeng rolled her eyes at Lin An and turned to find Ban Meng and the others. Lin An closed his eyes again. He must find a way out, otherwise the world will be over. Forcing himself to calm down, Lin An had just closed his eyes for a while when a voice suddenly came over. "Lin An, I'm afraid something is going to happen on Earth." The subordinates of the priests who were walking around the 9 nether realms suddenly disappeared. "I think they must have gone to Earth." Lin An couldn't help but open his eyes and sighed slightly in his heart. "I know." Chen Daoming paused for a moment, "How are you?" Lin An responded naturally, "What can I do? Just do what should be done." Chen Daoming said unhappily, "Don't play dumb, you know what I'm talking about." Lin An was silent for a moment, "I just descended to the Divine Emperor." Chen Daoming was silent. After a moment, his voice came again, "It seems that our Jiuzhou domain is going to experience a catastrophe again. Although I don't know why your cultivation level is declining so slowly, but logically, the Divine Emperor should not be the end, you have to be mentally prepared." Lin An's face was calm, as if he didn't care at all, "I know everything, you don't have to say so much." Chen Daoming sighed and ended the voice transmission. Lin An, for the first time after his cultivation level changed, transmitted the sound in that direction. Earth, the 31st floor of the Emperor's palace. Lan 11 was sitting on a chair in her room, staring out the window in a trance. Of course, she had heard the rumors outside, and she also knew that Lin An was not on Earth now. Although she had doubts about this matter, Lan 11 understood that such a thing might not be groundless. In all likelihood, everyone in the Jiuzhou domain, including Lin An, was really suppressed by the cultivation. This matter had already spread in the City of Promise, and even in the 4 heart cities of the East, West, South and North. No one knew where such news came from, but it was like a plague, sweeping the entire human world in an instant. At this moment, Lan 11 subconsciously raised her head. Above were the 32nd and 33rd floors, where Lin An's exclusive place was. Recalling the past, Lan 11's beautiful eyes flashed with complexity. And at this moment, suddenly a voice sounded in her ears. "Lan 11. Lan 11 couldn't help but be stunned, and then her beautiful eyes couldn't help but suddenly widen, "Emperor Lin." Listening to this voice that was clearly full of excitement, Lin An couldn't help but feel mixed emotions. This girl is really too lovable. Hearing that Lin An did not answer immediately, Lan 11 could not help but speak again, "Lin Di, how are you? Are you in Jiuzhou?" Lin An said, "I'm fine." Lan 11 was silent for a while. Lin did, if what is said outside is true, I think it's better for you not to return to Earth for the time being. I have temporarily summoned all members of the Ditian Corps and returned to Ditian Palace. Once any changes occur, we will have enough time to react. Lin An could not help but feel a little relieved. With the leadership of the troops, the girl who was a little cunning in her youth has now understood the world. You did a good job. Lin An couldn't help but smile a little. Lan 11 paused, then his tone became firm. Emperor Lin, don't worry, the Emperor Tian army is absolutely under my control, and the entire Emperor Tian army will be your backing, including me. Lin An couldn't help but be stunned. Why do you sound like I'm about to die? What have you heard? Lan 11 was surprised. They said that your cultivation in Zhu domain has begun to decline rapidly, saying that this world is suppressing you. They also said that your Zhu domain is not recognized by the world and should not exist in the world. Some people say that including you, Emperor Lin, are not even as good as the world-class magic gods. Lin An couldn't help but laugh. Don't believe them, they are talking nonsense, and rumors will naturally become more and more outrageous. Lan 11's beautiful eyes turned, and her eyelashes flickered and trembled on her foxy eyes. So, Emperor Lin, you don't have a big problem? That's about right. I know that you are Emperor Lin, even if the world suppresses you, so what? Lin An couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this, and a little trance flashed in his eyes. It seems that what he said is right. He is the Emperor Lin, and the world is suppressing him, so what? His thoughts became active, and Lin An couldn't help but smile. You are still so good at talking, although this is true. Even if I am suppressed a little, it is still no problem to deal with you, a little emperor. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xuanhuan. Chapter 409. Lan 11 couldn't help but chuckle and pursed her seductive red lips. Yes, yes, you are the most powerful, who can beat you? Lin An couldn't help but show a relaxed smile, and then spoke. Those things on earth, if I'm not mistaken, should be done by the priests, and even us humans are cooperating in it. It's even possible that these public opinions are led by certain beings among humans. It's just that they are not sure about my situation and dare not act rashly. Lan 11's face became more solemn. Priest? Isn't he in your Zhu region? Is he back? Lin An responded, yes, a few days ago, I received news that the priest and many of his men disappeared from the Kyushu territory. No matter how you look at it, they should be hidden on the earth. Even if my strength has declined, the priest will definitely not dare to jump out. There won't be any big problems on his side for the time being. What may appear now are some worms among us humans. Lan 11 nodded seriously. You are right. I mobilized all the Emperor's heavenly army to guard against this move. The position of Lord of the World is really coveted. So I still have to work hard for you in the next time. You can leave other places temporarily, but there can't be any problems in the Promised City. If anyone dares to make any move, I will give you permission to kill without mercy. Lan 11 looked solemn. I know, as long as I'm here, nothing will happen in the Promised City. Lin An nodded. The impact on my cultivation is only temporary, and this world cannot suppress me. Wait until I go back. Lan 11's beautiful eyes showed a different kind of brilliance, and then she chuckled twice as if jokingly. Don't worry. Don't you know me yet? Just this sentence of waiting for you is enough for me to shed my blood. Lin An also smiled and said nothing more. Although it was a joke, Lin An knew that in Lan 11's eyes this was not a joke, she would really do it. With a somewhat heavy heart, Lin closed her eyes again. Time passed like this for several more months. The fluctuations in Lin An's body have been weakening. Today, A few months later, Lin An's fluctuations in the God Emperor have become minimal. It is obvious that in the not-too-distant future, this fluctuation in the God Emperor will completely disappear. By then, Lin An's combat power will be reduced to that of a demigod. Not to mention anything else, the current Lin An, in terms of cultivation alone, is already worse than Kimeng. Although this is just cultivation and not real combat power, it is enough to show that Lin An's weakness is quite serious. Fortunately, Lin An had anticipated it in advance and returned directly to the Kyushu territory, so such news had not yet reached the Earth. To be precise, no one on the planet today still has the slightest understanding of Lin An's condition. Even Lan 11 didn't know what Lin An's strength was. However, many forces that were ready to take action have always been in this unknown situation, hiding their thoughts in Lin An's past power and not daring to show any of them. Without definite information, who dares to be the first to take the lead? Not to mention jumping out directly, or even a little testing, no one has the courage. Everyone understands that the current situation is like two arrows already on the string. They have already reached the point where they are at odds with each other. Any slight disturbance will cause the fusion of forms. No one dares to be the pathfinder, and no one dares to be the trigger. Even though many people have already seen the ulterior motives of some people, before they are exposed openly, they are still members of Emperor Lin's command. At least for now. Therefore, under the maintenance of this situation, the two sides have reached a delicate balance, so the Earth can still be considered peaceful at the moment. But everyone knows that the current calm is just the last piece before the storm. The storm is very, very close. More than a month later, an inexplicable voice suddenly began to spread among the people. We want to meet Mr. Lin Di. Everyone is spreading rumors that Sir Lin Di's cultivation has declined. Why doesn't Sir Lin Di clarify the matter? Master Lin Di, come out. We want to see you. If you don't come out, it means the rumors are true. You are the one who is afraid. I don't know where this call to meet Emperor Lin started. However, the momentum was extremely fast. In a very short period of time, it had already formed a storm and swept through the entire Promised City. And when the voice became louder and louder, someone actually appeared at the door of Emperor Tiangong, holding a big sign, "Please Mr. Lin Emperor, clarify the rumors and make the world pure." The appearance of this person was like a vent for the entire storm, and countless people gathered in an instant. Master Lin Di, come out. We want the truth. We need a capable leader. Mr. Lin Di, come out and prove your ability. Master Lin Di hasn't come out yet, maybe he's afraid. As time passed slowly, the streets outside the Promised City gradually became empty, and even the doors and windows of the shops on the street were closed. Some streets were even completely deserted. As the eyes began to shift towards the center, many hurried figures could be seen, rushing towards the center of the city. Many strangers met and could tell at a glance that they were fellow travelers. Two strangers could even start a conversation and head toward the city center together. And if you look at such figures from the sky above the city of promise, you will find that there are countless of them, like a long winding dragon. Some people stood at the door of their own shop, looking at the people coming and going with hesitation, and passers-by immediately cast strange eyes, as if looking at an alien. People in the whole city are rushing to the Emperor's palace. Why don't you go? When you are out of tune with the surroundings, you are a monster. And in the end, this person quickly closed the shop and joined the crowd. Such situations are also not uncommon in the entire city of promise. And under this situation, not long after, the center of the city of promise was already overcrowded. These people spread out to the periphery with the Emperor's palace as the center. There were dense crowds of people in 4 directions and 4 streets. This is the people surrounding the Emperor's palace. Among them, most people just wanted Lin An to come out and crush those damn rumors. The slander against Lin An was simply unbearable. Most of them still supported Lin An. However, Such a group of people actually surrounded the Emperor Tian Palace together. I can see the laws of things. Author, Yitiao Xianyue. Chapter 410. The huge cry was like a surging wave, boiling and boiling. The 100-meter-high Emperor Tiangong was like a lonely boat in it. In front of the gate of Dishan Palace, Yi Zhan's expression was extremely solemn, like an ant on a hot pot. He had already sent his men out to suppress it, but even if it was suppressed, it was only verbal. With the people of the promised city in front of them, could they really use force? 3 floors of personnel firmly guarded all directions of the Emperor Tiangong to prevent these civilians from rushing in. Although they may not have the courage, after all, this is Lin En's place, but no one can guarantee whether anyone will become jealous after a long time. Damn it, even though you can see through this kind of trick at a glance, it's really tricky. Yi Zhan looked outside with a sullen face, and couldn't help but frown and curse. People outside cannot see the inside of Dishan Palace, but people inside can clearly see the excitement outside. Lan 11 stood aside, with a cold look on her pretty face. Her whole body was like a piece of ice, and there was no one within 10 meters around her. This is Lan 11's aura to the outside world. The little daughter's posture is not Lan 11's daily style, but a cold and beautiful ice rose. This has long been spread among everyone. At this moment, Lan 11 had a murderous look in her eyes and suddenly said, "Master Lin Di gave me the privilege to see blood when necessary." Yi Zhan was stunned for a moment. Isn't there no news about Mr. Lin Di? Have you contacted him? Lan 11 nodded. A long time ago, Mr. Lin Di came to see me once. Did Mr. Lin Di explain anything? And although the following words were not spoken, the meaning was clearly obvious. Not only those guys in the dark who are ready to find out about Lin En, they also want to know. Lan 11 glanced at Yi Zhan and said, "Except for giving me the privilege to do it, there is nothing else. What you want to know, the whole earth doesn't know, and neither do I." Yi Zhan sighed after hearing this. Hey. I don't know if Mr. Lin Di knows the situation at hand. It would be great if he was here. Lan 11's beautiful eyes rolled. How do you think Mr. Lin Di would handle this matter if he were here? Yi Zhan couldn't help but be startled and said as a matter of course he showed up. Once he shows up, the situation will naturally collapse. Lan 11's face was still cold, but her eyes had some profound meaning. I meant something else. Yi Zhan couldn't help being stunned. Another meaning? But for a moment, Yi Zhan couldn't help but his pupils suddenly shrank, and his eyes gradually filled with a bit of astonishment and shock. You mean? I mean if. Before Yi Zhan could finish speaking, Lan 11 directly blocked the next words. Yi Zhan was silent. Immediately, Yi Zhan began to pace, walking around several times with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Lan 11 didn't bother him in any way. Upstairs, all members of the Emperor's heavenly army are getting ready to go. They can also feel this turmoil. The existence of this power is enough for her to cope with all changes. Lan 11's confidence is extremely sufficient. Unless, more than 4 God Emperors are coming. That's right, the Emperor's heavenly army now has 3 God Emperors, and together with Yi Zhan, there are 4 in total. The Emperor's heavenly army, which has not been suppressed, has full combat power. For a moment, Yi Zhan's footsteps suddenly stopped, with a look of determination in his eyes. Okay, what do you think we should do? Lan 11 still had a cold and cool expression, but her eyes were a little more solemn. Obviously, the current situation is caused by someone inciting public opinion. As long as public opinion is calmed, the predicament will naturally collapse. Most of the people are convinced of Mr. Lin Di. They don't want to rebel. They just can't stand the slander of Mr. Lin Di. They want Mr. Lin to show up. The rumors will naturally be self-defeating. And those people, the purpose is obviously the same, and this is the root of this turmoil. Since their hearts are with Mr. Lin Di, this matter is naturally not difficult. Surrounding the Emperor Tiangong is akin to rebellion, and they only need a little persuasion. The difficulty is that those people will not end like this if they don't see the reality of Mr. Lin Di. Then, as long as someone dares to stand up and stop us when we are quelling people's grievances, we will charge him with treason and arrest him on the spot. This will kill the chicken and scare the monkeys, and secondly, let the people know that this time is not a simple one. It's a gathering of people, but someone did it intentionally. The people are not fools. After a little reaction, they will naturally understand the current situation. Those who are interested will retreat. Yi Zhan couldn't help but frown. That's true, but once those people behind us jump out, then we will have to shoot. They are hiding us and exposing us. We don't know how many people have defected, but the current situation is definitely not something that a mere tribe can provoke. Now it can affect the whole body. There was a subtle arc at the corner of Lan 11's mouth. This smile seemed cold and decisive. The Imperial Heavenly Army is not a vegetarian. If they dare to jump out, they must be prepared to die. The moment they choose to stand opposite Lord Lin, life and death are no longer in their hands. We have all received great favor from Mr. Lin Emperor. How can we be alone at this moment? At most, we are just a few God Emperors, and we can still turn against God. Life is worth doing. It's just a matter of death, what's there to fear? This sentence, under Lan 11's deliberate operation, resounded throughout the interior of the Emperor Tian Palace, but it was not exposed to the outside world. For a moment, the entire Emperor Tian Palace was suddenly filled with a terrifying aura of iron and blood. Your greatest responsibility is to protect the harmony and stability of human life. Lin An's words were still echoing in his ears, and Lin An's face could not help but appear in everyone's heart. Now, the time for them to fulfill their duties has finally arrived. In an instant, countless people suddenly opened their eyes from meditation, and an indescribable powerful aura burst out of their eyes. This is not the power of cultivation, this is the vibration of the mind, this is the resonance of determination. And their legion leader, Lan 11's voice is like a powerful tonic, igniting the blood in the hearts of many people, and even some of them even have a little red in their eyes. It's just a matter of death, what's there to fear? This is their army commander, the Len Meigui they have always sincerely respected, and the true will of their Ditian army. When Lin En, the soul of the Ditian army, is gone, Lan 11 is the will of the entire Ditian army. I only have death, what is there to fear?